Sagittarius, something much bigger than you is calling. A divine warning you cannot ignore. Sagittarius sun, moon, or rising. There's a reason you've been drawn to this message right now. This is no ordinary moment. Something larger than your mind can reason with, something far more sacred than chance, is moving in your life. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel into your chest. Can you sense it? That quiet pressure rising beneath the surface? That subtle flutter that feels like both fear and hope at once? That is not anxiety. That is alignment preparing to break through. You are being called not to action just yet, but to awareness. Your Heavenly Father, your divine source, is trying to reach you directly. And this message is not a warning meant to frighten you. It is an act of love. A whisper from the divine saying, "You've carried enough. Now it's time to be guided." Sagittarius, you've always lived by your own compass. You've chased meaning across borders, books, and beliefs. But right now, Spirit is chasing you. It's time for a deeper trust, a sacred stillness before the leap. A shift is coming, one that will touch every layer of your life. You may not yet see it clearly, but your soul already knows. So if something inside you is stirring, listen closely. This is not just another video. This is your confirmation. If these words find you at the right time, don't forget to like, subscribe, or share this message from Zodiac Wisdom. You are not alone, and you are not imagining this. Now let's walk through what Spirit needs you to hear. Gate 1. The first divine message, reclaiming true worth and financial courage. Sagittarius, the first part of this divine message is about your material world. Money, work, stability, your sense of value. And yet, it's about so much more than just finances. It's about how you've been seeing yourself. How you've been underestimating the gifts you carry. How you've been conditioned to think that you must prove your worth before you receive what is already yours by divine right. There is a situation in your life right now, or perhaps just on the horizon, that is asking you to look at your relationship with abundance. Not just the money in your bank account, but the energetic field of enoughness that surrounds you or doesn't. Spirit is stepping in not to shame you, but to correct a false belief you've carried for too long. The belief that wanting more is selfish, or that asking for more than survival is greedy, or that living with financial pressure is somehow noble. It is not. It is unnecessary. It is a story someone else taught you, and you're finally ready to rewrite it. You may have noticed signs already. A bill that caught you off guard. A job that drains you but doesn't recognize you. A creative gift that you've buried for years because it doesn't pay enough. Perhaps someone recently questioned your value, or you've been settling for less than you deserve. Clients who don't pay on time. Roles where your ideas are overlooked. Collaborators who treat your energy as expendable. These are not random difficulties. They are divine disruptions. They are Spirit's way of showing you, this no longer fits. This is not the frequency of who you're becoming. You have been generous, Sagittarius. You always are. You give freely, often beyond what you should. But now, the question Spirit is asking is not what you're willing to give. The question is, are you willing to receive? Let me tell you about Mara, a Sagittarius moon and small business owner, who came to me when everything seemed to be falling apart. Her income had dried up. Clients were ghosting her. She felt ashamed, especially because she had worked so hard to get to where she was. But when we pulled her cards, every symbol pointed to one core truth. Mara wasn't broke because of lack. She was blocked because she had made herself small. Every time someone asked for a discount, she said yes. Every time she launched a new offer, she apologized for it being too expensive. Deep down, she feared that truly owning her worth would push people away. Through our work together, Mara began to shift, not her pricing but her perception. She raised her rates not from arrogance but from alignment. She started saying no to things that drained her. She stopped over-explaining her value and began trusting it. Within 3 months, her income tripled. Not because she worked more, but because she finally allowed herself to take up the space her soul had always been asking for. Sagittarius, your financial breakthrough will not come by working harder. It will come when you stop dimming your light to be more acceptable. You are not here to beg for breadcrumbs. You are here to walk in the energy of someone who knows their worth and acts accordingly. The divine has been placing small nudges along your path. Unexpected conversations about money, a sudden feeling of restlessness when you think about your job, a strange clarity when you imagine leaving a role that no longer feels aligned. These aren't coincidences. They are activations. Spirit is inviting you to do the most radical thing of all, to believe that your dreams are worth investing in, and that you are the first one who must believe it. There may be an offer coming soon, one that feels slightly risky, outside your comfort zone. Maybe a freelance opportunity, a shift into a new industry, a creative path that feels both thrilling and terrifying. It may not look logical at first. You may question whether it's too late, too much, or too uncertain, but your soul will recognize it. That's the sign. When your heart expands even as your mind doubts, that is your yes. And if nothing has come yet, don't rush. Spirit is clearing your field. Sometimes the opportunities cannot arrive until the old energies exit first. You might feel the discomfort of waiting. That too is divine. The pause is never empty. It is sacred space, preparing you to say yes from your wholeness, not your desperation. Your relationship with money is not separate from your relationship with self. Every time you say yes to something beneath your value, you affirm the lie that you must shrink to be supported. Every time you delay your dreams out of fear that they won't be realistic, you silence the voice of your own soul. That ends now. Your Father in heaven, your guides, your highest self, they are all aligning the path in front of you. But they need you to meet them with action, with courage, with the energy of someone who remembers, I am worthy because I am, not because I perform, not because I prove, but because I exist. There may also be a conversation coming with someone who sees your gift, but doesn't fully honor it yet. Be clear. Speak from your center. Say what you're worth without justifying it. Say what you need without apologizing. This is not just about money. It is about energetic contracts, the agreements you make in how you're treated, compensated, and seen. And they begin with you. This is your invitation to stop waiting for others to recognize your worth before you do. This is the moment you decide that struggle is not your legacy. Expansion is. And from that choice, the world around you begins to shift. Doors open. Support arrives. You become magnetic not because you chase, but because you align. Sagittarius, there is a divine plan unfolding for you. And this first message is clear. You are being repositioned into greater abundance, but it cannot land until you are willing to receive it differently. That means honoring your voice, trusting your worth, and saying yes to what elevates your life, even if it scares you. The challenge ahead will not be whether you are good enough. That has already been decided. The only question now is, will you claim it? Will you trust the divine nudge inside you more than the fear that was taught to you? Will you finally step into the life that's always been waiting for your permission to begin? You are not here to survive. You are here to thrive. And that begins with how you treat yourself in moments of choice. Choose wisely. Spirit is watching. And the path is already unfolding beneath your feet. Gate 2. The second divine message, boundaries, relationships, and emotional liberation. Sagittarius, the second message you're being called to receive is about your heart. Not the beating organ in your chest, but the emotional map it holds, the invisible web of connections, relationships, memories, longings, and unspoken aches you've carried for too long. And more importantly, it's about how your boundaries, or lack of them, have shaped your experience of love, belonging, and exhaustion. For so many years, you've equated love with sacrifice. You've convinced yourself that true loyalty means being endlessly available. You've confused connection with codependency, not because you're weak, but because your heart is vast, generous, and attuned to the needs of others. You feel things deeply even when you pretend otherwise. You see the best in people even when they show you otherwise. But Spirit is stepping in now, not to harden your heart, but to heal it. There is a relationship dynamic in your life, past or present, that has quietly drained you. Maybe it's a partner who once felt like home, but now feels like a cage. Maybe it's a friendship where you do all the listening, all the emotional labor. Maybe it's a family pattern where guilt is used to keep you compliant. Or maybe it's subtler. A recurring story that plays in your head, whispering that you are only worthy when you are needed. These dynamics may not seem urgent on the outside, but energetically they are suffocating your growth. Spirit is asking you to take your hands off the fire. You cannot save others by burning yourself. Let me tell you about Julian, a Sagittarius rising who was caught in a 7-year friendship with someone who always needed him, but never showed up in return. This friend would call at 2 a.m. with a crisis, lean on Julian emotionally, borrow money, crash on his couch, vent about the same heartbreak over and over again. Julian, ever the loyal archer, believed that being a good person meant never saying no. Until one day he got sick. Not a cold, not the flu, his body literally shut down. Chronic fatigue, anxiety attacks, unexplainable aches. His nervous system had internalized what his boundaries wouldn't express. I am tired. I can't carry this anymore. That's when Spirit intervened, not through punishment but through clarity. With help, Julian began to name what he'd never dared to say. This is too much. I need space. I need relationships where I also receive. The fallout wasn't easy. That friend grew distant, accused him of being selfish. But within weeks, Julian noticed something. He had more energy, more creativity. He started attracting new people, people who laughed with him instead of draining him. The moment he stopped overgiving, he started living. Sagittarius, who in your life are you holding on to out of obligation rather than love? What patterns are you repeating in hopes of finally being chosen, seen, or validated? What boundaries do you know need to be set, but you're afraid of the fallout? Spirit is not asking you to cut people off recklessly. Spirit is asking you to remember that you are a person too, that your needs matter, that love does not require you to disappear. Healthy relationships are not built on how much you can tolerate. They are built on mutual respect, emotional safety, and chosen vulnerability, not performative self-sacrifice. You may be entering a season where certain relationships fall away, not because you're becoming cold, but because you're becoming clear. You may find yourself less tolerant of manipulation, guilt, subtle competition, or emotional one-sidedness. You may wake up one morning and realize that someone's presence no longer feels safe, no longer feels sweet. And that realization, Sagittarius, is sacred. Let go with grace. You don't need to demonize the other person. Simply bless the role they played, and release the version of you who kept overcompensating to keep the connection alive. When you set boundaries, you don't just protect your peace. You elevate your entire vibration. You send a message to the universe. I am ready for love that sustains me, not drains me. But this message is not just about people. It's also about the roles you've played. Are you always the strong one? The one with advice? The one who has it all together? Sometimes that persona becomes a prison. It makes others think you don't need help. It makes you think you're not allowed to fall apart. But Sagittarius, Spirit is asking you to soften. You don't have to be the wise teacher all the time. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, I'm not okay. I need someone to hold me too. There is also healing available now for your inner child. That version of you who learned early that love meant performance. That affection had to be earned. That you had to be easy, agreeable, useful, entertaining, or else you would be abandoned. But you're not a child anymore. You are the one who chooses now. And you get to choose to stop proving your worth to people who were never qualified to measure it. Let me share the story of Soraya, a Sagittarius sun and single mother. For years, she allowed her ex-husband to criticize her co-parenting, call her lazy, and manipulate her with money. She tolerated it for the sake of the kids. But her children started mimicking his tone. That was her wake-up call. She realized she wasn't protecting them. She was modeling silence. With the help of a therapist and spiritual counsel, she learned how to hold firm boundaries without rage, how to stand tall in her truth without explaining it. Her children began to shift too. They saw their mother become a woman who stood in her dignity, and they followed. Sagittarius, this gate is about radical self-respect, about knowing that saying no doesn't make you unkind, it makes you trustworthy, about understanding that some people will not rise with you when you rise. That's okay. Your journey is not about dragging everyone with you. It's about walking with those who want to walk beside you. You are entering a new chapter of emotional sovereignty. You will still love, still care, still open your heart, but you will no longer beg. You will no longer bend your boundaries to keep peace externally while waging war internally. Spirit is calling you to step out of emotional survival and into emotional truth. This is your liberation. It won't come with fireworks. It will come in quiet moments, in new clarity, in choosing to rest when you used to push through, in speaking when you used to swallow your words, in walking away when you used to compromise your soul. There is someone watching you now, not with judgment but with reverence. your younger self, your future self, your heavenly guides. They are all nodding in agreement. It's time. It's time to make space for relationships that match your light. And that begins with treating yourself like someone worth protecting. The lesson is not just about who you lose, it's about who you become when you stop abandoning yourself. Gate 3. The third divine message, soul-level love and spiritual reconnection. Sagittarius, we now enter the third gate, the most tender, the most mystical, the most sacred. This is the realm of soul-level love. Not the fleeting passion, not the transactional companionship, not even the loyal friendship that stands the test of time. This is something deeper. A reconnection to something older than memory, wiser than logic, stronger than circumstance. A love your soul remembers, even if your mind cannot explain it. At some point in your life, Sagittarius, you have felt it. That unshakable pull toward someone who didn't make sense on paper, but made your heart feel like home. Perhaps it was a brief encounter. Perhaps it was a long relationship. Perhaps it hasn't yet manifested in the physical, but lives as a recurring dream, a quiet ache, a whisper that keeps returning at the edges of sleep. You are not imagining it. You are remembering. Soul-level love is not a fantasy. It is a reunion waiting for readiness. Spirit is bringing this theme into focus now because something is being stirred in you. A hunger not just for connection but for resonance. You are no longer satisfied with surface conversations, relationships built on roles or routine. You want to be seen, not just admired. You want to be known in your silence, not just entertained in your storytelling. You want someone who recognizes your fire, but also respects your need to wander. You are looking for the sacred mirror. And Spirit is telling you, it's looking for you too. Let me tell you about Camille, a Sagittarius moon who had spent years building a life of independence and creative freedom. She wasn't chasing love. She didn't believe in twin flames or fated meetings. But there was one man, someone from her university days, who had appeared, disappeared, and reappeared in her life like clockwork. Every few years, a message, a song shared, a memory stirred. No big drama, just that unmistakable pull. Camille always dismissed it. Too complicated, too far away, too old. Until last autumn, when she began having dreams, vivid, emotional, prophetic dreams, of standing in a foreign city, looking into his eyes and simply knowing. Without planning, she booked a spontaneous trip to Europe. While on a small street in Lisbon, she looked up, and there he was. They both froze. No words at first. Just that ancient feeling of coming home. They spent 4 hours together. Nothing romantic, just sharing stories and laughter. She didn't move there. He didn't propose. But something shifted in her heart forever. That meeting healed something she didn't know was still broken. The belief that she was alone in this life. That no one could truly see her. Sagittarius, this gate is not a promise of a fairy tale. This is not about obsession, possession, or drama. This is about resonance, and it can come in many forms. It may arrive through a new person unexpectedly, at a time when you are finally open. It may return through someone from your past, this time with more clarity and purpose. Or it may awaken within you a longing so precise and personal that you begin vibrating at a new frequency. One that magnetizes exactly the love your soul needs to evolve. You may feel a strange softness now, a vulnerability you've been avoiding. You may cry for no reason. You may remember a name you haven't thought of in years. These are signs. Not that you're broken, but that you're reopening. Spirit is preparing your heart for a kind of intimacy that goes far beyond physical connection. The kind that sees you across lifetimes. That meets you in silence. That loves you because of your wild spirit, not in spite of it. There is also a deep healing available now in how you love yourself. So many Sagittarians have built their identity on being strong, free, unbothered. But beneath that armor is a soul that longs to be held. And not just romantically, spiritually. Soul-level love also includes your connection to the divine. Have you felt distant from spirit lately? Have your prayers gone unanswered? Have you doubted whether you are still guided, still chosen, still heard? Let me remind you of something that is easy to forget. You are always connected. You may walk away. You may get distracted. You may go through phases of disbelief or grief. But the love that spirit has for you, it never flickers. It never withdraws. It does not require performance. You could stop meditating, stop journaling, stop hoping, And still Spirit would be waiting, arms open, no shame, no punishment. Just presence. Just love. Some of you may be reawakening to a spiritual practice that once brought you joy: astrology, tarot, poetry, movement, prayer. This too is a kind of soul love. When you return to the practices that remind you who you really are, you realign with your highest self. You begin attracting people and experiences that match your essence, not your wounds. There's also a chance, Sagittarius, that you've been guarding your heart from a connection that feels too big, too powerful, too risky. Perhaps someone already in your life sees you in a way that scares you. Perhaps you've met someone online in passing in a strange synchronistic way and you've brushed it off as coincidence. But it lingers. That feeling won't leave. And Spirit wants you to know, the fear you feel is not a red flag. It's a threshold. Love that transforms you will always feel like standing at the edge of a cliff. You must decide whether to jump or remain in the safe, predictable flatness of half-hearted connection. Sagittarius, you were not born for flat. You were born for elevation, for expansion, for intimacy that challenges you, disarms you, teaches you things no book ever could. So how do you prepare? You start by being honest. With yourself, with others, with Spirit. You name what you want. You stop pretending you're fine with casual if you crave depth. You stop acting cool if you're really craving commitment. You stop apologizing for wanting a love that both anchors and uplifts you. You stop settling for being tolerated when you long to be cherished. And you listen. Listen to the songs that make your chest ache. The poems that feel like they were written about you. The dreams that leave you crying upon waking. These are soul messages. Follow them. Let them soften you. Let them show you where your walls are. Then decide which ones are worth keeping and which ones are meant to fall. This gate, dear Sagittarius, is not about urgency. It's about readiness. You do not need to chase love. You need only to become so fully yourself that nothing less than soul resonance feels right anymore. And from that place, that frequency of deep self-honoring love will find you. It already has. Gate 4. The fourth divine message, awakening and inner peace. Sagittarius, you've walked through the gates of abundance, emotional truth, and soul love. And now you stand at the threshold of the fourth divine message, the call to awaken and return to your center. Not the center defined by the world's noise or the external identities you've learned to wear, but the quiet, undisturbed place within you where peace has always lived, waiting. In the chaos of life, we often confuse movement with progress, ambition with purpose, noise with clarity. You, Sagittarius, have been moving fast. Perhaps too fast. You've leapt from opportunity to opportunity, from project to plan, from idea to impulse, trying to outrun a silence you didn't know you feared. But now Spirit asks you not to run, but to return. Return to your breath. Return to your body. Return to your knowing. This awakening is not loud. It won't come with thunder or lightning or a grand epiphany on a mountaintop. It may arrive in the way morning light touches your coffee cup. In the moment you stand barefoot in your kitchen and remember who you are beyond all the striving. In the way your heart softens unexpectedly when you read an old journal entry and see how far you've come. This awakening is not about changing your life overnight. It's about remembering that peace is not something to be earned. It's something to be reclaimed. Let me tell you about Min, a Sagittarius sun with a rising Capricorn. A high-performing executive in Singapore, Min lived for the next goal. New contracts, new countries, new metrics. She meditated, but only to optimize her focus. She did yoga, but as part of her productivity routine. Nothing truly penetrated her armor until the day she received a phone call from home. Her grandmother, the one who used to braid her hair and hum lullabies under the stars, had passed away. Min flew home for the funeral, expecting it to be a brief interruption. Instead, it was a complete unraveling. Sitting beside her grandmother's altar, smelling the incense, listening to the silence of her village, something inside Min broke open. For the first time in years she cried, not tears of stress or frustration, but of grief and gratitude. In those quiet days she heard no divine voice, but she felt a presence. She saw visions in her dreams, her grandmother speaking to her with calm eyes, asking only one question. When will you come back to yourself? That was her awakening. Min didn't quit her job or give up her goals, but she changed the way she moved through them. She began every morning not with her inbox, but with stillness. She took one day off a week to do nothing, absolutely nothing. And in that nothingness, she found the peace she had been chasing all over the world. Sagittarius, Spirit is asking you a similar question. When will you come back to yourself? You may be going through a season where distractions no longer work, where old comforts no longer soothe, where you try to scroll away the anxiety or talk your way out of loneliness but nothing sticks. This is not depression. It's not failure. It's your soul longing for your attention, for your presence, for your willingness to sit with what is without fixing it, without numbing it, without judging it. You may be called now to slow down, to simplify, to reorient your days not around what you must do, but around what makes you feel alive. Maybe it's tending to plants. Maybe it's walking barefoot on earth. Maybe it's singing to your pets, or writing letters you'll never send, or learning to bake your grandmother's bread. These small acts, Sagittarius, are sacred. They are not distractions. They are how the soul breathes. But make no mistake, this gate is not only about rest. It is about awakening, a spiritual shedding, the moment when illusions fall away, and you finally recognize how long you've been living half asleep. Awakening is not always blissful. Sometimes it begins with heartbreak, or a sudden loss, or a spiritual exhaustion that forces you to surrender your old frameworks. Sometimes it feels like you're falling apart, but in truth you are falling inward. Perhaps lately you've lost interest in what used to excite you. The goals feel flat. The drama feels draining. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're just ready for something real. Spirit is shifting your frequency, stripping away the noise, so you can hear your true rhythm again. A quieter, deeper rhythm. The heartbeat of your destiny. Sagittarius, you were never meant to live a shallow life. Your soul chose expansion, but not expansion at any cost. Not expansion that ignores your body's needs, your nervous system's wisdom, your heart's whispers. You are being invited now to expand inward, to grow roots, not just wings. Because without roots, even the brightest flame flickers in the wind. There may be a practice calling you now: meditation, breathwork, ancestral rituals, daily gratitude. Start small. Spirit doesn't need you to become a monk. It only asks that you become available. Available to stillness. Available to presence. Available to the wisdom that already lives inside you. And don't be surprised if, in this stillness, you begin to feel emotions you've long buried. Grief, rage, tenderness. They are not setbacks. They are medicine. They are the parts of you that have waited patiently year after year to be felt, to be honored, to be set free. Let me also tell you about Javi, a Sagittarius with a Pisces moon. He always used humor to hide his sensitivity. The class clown, the life of every party. But behind the laughter was a boy who never felt safe. In his 30s, he began having panic attacks, always in quiet moments. During yoga, during sleep, during silence. That's when he realized his awakening wasn't going to look like light and joy. It would come through shadows. He found a mentor, began shadow work, stopped bypassing his sadness. And through that, his panic melted. Not because the fear disappeared, but because he stopped fearing his fear. Today, Javi leads men's circles on emotional awakening. His voice has changed. Slower, deeper, more present. And he always says one thing to his students: peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the willingness to sit beside it without running. Sagittarius, this is your moment to sit beside yourself. Not to fix, but to witness. Not to judge, but to love. The answers you've been seeking don't live in the next adventure. They live in the space between your inhales, in the pause, in the return. You are not falling behind. You are falling into alignment. Conclusion: the final divine blessing. Sagittarius, you have traveled far, through the gates of transformation, truth, soul resonance, and deep awakening. And now you stand at the edge of a new horizon, not because you must conquer more, but because you are finally ready to receive more. Not more achievements, not more approval, but more truth, more peace, more alignment. This divine message wasn't sent to change you. It was sent to remind you of who you've always been beneath the noise. A seeker of light, a protector of truth, a soul meant to inspire others, not with perfection but with presence. Every trial you've endured, every wound you've carried, Every loss you've survived has been part of your sacred shaping. You are not behind. You are not late. You are right on time, arriving now at yourself. You don't need to rush from here. There is no race. There is only recognition. You are waking up. You are shedding old skins. You are choosing peace not because life has become easier, but because you've grown stronger. And this strength is quiet. It doesn't shout. It radiates. So take a breath now. Feel the quiet within you. That stillness, that's your soul saying, "We're home." If this message stirred something deep in you, it wasn't an accident. It was a divine appointment. You were meant to hear these words at this time in this exact way. So if it brought clarity, peace, or tears, trust that you're not alone. You are being held, guided, and deeply loved by forces far greater than your fears. If this journey touched your heart, share your reflection in the comments. You may be the mirror someone else needs today. And if you'd like to keep receiving messages like this, I invite you gently. Like, subscribe, and join us here, where truth meets healing, and where you are always, always welcome.